Hi guys, it's Jessica. I want to welcome you back to my channel. Today we're going to go over episode 3 of Solo's Peg. And so far this has been the most emotional and impactful of these Solo episodes. Spoilers ahead, since these shows are a little glimpse inside a person and they're less about an overall scenario happening, or at least this one is more about Peg herself versus the situation she's in. I don't know what I could say that wouldn't be spoilery. Peg is only 30 minutes long, which is the longest of the episodes so far, but still in the grand scheme of a TV show is not that long, and if you have any concerns about spoilers, I definitely recommend that you watch it before seeing this review. It is clear Peg is the daughter of Tom from the last Solos, so she actually interacted with the second Tom, and second Tom, it turns out, is a robot. He's not a clone, and they talk about how the business venture for those clones / robots was not actually very successful. The company itself goes out of business just a few years later after Tom has used the service. Some of those questions that I was grappling with, like how does the family feel about this and what is going on with the family, gets touched on briefly here in this next episode, and it seems to say that in general people don't like the clone scenario, or they don't like the robots replacing loved ones who have passed. Makes perfect sense to me. I don't understand why anyone thought that was going to work. A little bit it strikes me as like a man idea, like
you can just take an algorithm and a robot and something with all the memories and that looks like the person you know and love and plop them in, and that will be enough.
I don't think that's something that a woman would have come up with, or anyone who's like particularly connected to their emotions. I don't mean to make it a gendered thing. It's just in my experience, generally women are more sensitive and are more in tune with emotions and social interactions than men. So it seems like going through the motions and having the right memories and facial expressions would work to a man, where most of the time women understand there's more going on that a robot or a simulation couldn't emulate appropriately. I do think it's interesting they got this far in the process as to actually make a whole robot of a loved one, particularly because we have some AI and some artificial pets right now, or artificial companions right now in service. There's this seal that we give to some senior citizens, and the reason that it's a stuffed robotic seal and not a cat or a dog, senior citizens who had a cat or dog, they had owned those pets before, they had a frame of reference for the robotic cat or dog, so the AI, the robot inside, wasn't lining up with their experiences of an actual cat or dog, and it was leading people to reject the creature. So they made it into a seal, something really cuddly and fuzzy, and something that a human, most people have no frame of reference for how it's supposed to act, so they accept the robot simulation of it and they take comfort and companionship from it. But really the only way to use a robot for companionship is to have it be something we like and find cuddly and adorable, but that we don't have a lot of experience with, so we can't compare the robot to the real thing and realize the robot is lacking or not acting appropriately. Peg herself doesn't talk a lot about Dad too. The fact that she doesn't mention him at all sort of says to me that he wasn't a great replacement. He wasn't really remarkable in any way. He didn't stand up as a good comparison. She doesn't seem to go to him for comfort, and she doesn't seem to remember him doing the secret handshake or remember him going to events with her or anything like that. It's interesting how they did the human-robot exchange. Her dad passes away, and then the robot comes 2 weeks later, start the whole grieving process for the dad, and then someone who looks exactly like their father steps into that place. It seems like it would be deeply disturbing and very confusing for a child of 6. The fact that she noticed her mom didn't like the robot and that the mother was staying with the robot for the children's sake. I don't know why her mom made that executive decision. It is tragic that the mother dies a couple weeks in. I can't help but wonder how much of that was intentional. The mom realized she couldn't keep living like this, or it was a legitimate accident. We won't know. It's just speculation on my part that that's even an option, but it seems to me the whole Tom robot scenario is deeply untenable. and I don't know why you'd have put your family in that situation to start with. So then Peg goes and lives with her grandmother in England, and we see that she's a very shy, nervous girl. I found Peg really relatable right from the jump. When she wakes up in this situation, she is a little confused, disoriented, probably natural from the procedure, but she's also, asking a few questions, but at the same time stressing how much she doesn't want to be a bother, how much she doesn't want to worry anyone or have anyone go out of their way. And as someone with anxiety disorder, especially like a social anxiety disorder, I found this immediately relatable. And I think too, it's something that'll be relatable to a lot of people. A lot of us have been in situations we're not entirely comfortable or familiar with, or we've been in situations that should be fine and that we should be comfortable asking for what we need, and we're just not. Whether it's an anxiety disorder or it's just human nature, I guess is up for debate. Or if in this case it's a product of how Peg was raised, where it seems like her father really wanted to provide everything she needed, and it backfired on him, and the things that she felt she really needed, like more time with her father before he passed, or her father to be well, or for her mother to be around to take care of her, these things that she really wanted are needs that weren't met. And through no fault of those people, I'm not blaming Peg's father or mother for this, it's a tragedy, but as a child that's what she needed. She didn't get it, and that's when she learned not to wish for things, not to ask for things, and even to a certain extent that maybe she didn't deserve those things, or that the world wouldn't give those things to her even when she did ask. And that sort of like created this more closed off person. She also delves into a lot of things about old age and aging, which, I'm not at that point in my life, but certainly I have older friends and older family members who talk about being invisible because of their age. And this was just another descriptor of that, another explanation or another depiction of it. I think one of the things that's really interesting about solos is they have been taking different stages of life and further exploring them. The first two are more relatable maybe to someone in their 20s to their 40s, and this one is tackling the elderly specifically. And even though there are lots of parts that were relatable because she talks about her whole life from childhood on, I think it's going to resonate a lot with some people who might be in their older senior years as well, and is starting to talk about some of those issues about seniors not being seen or not feeling like they're useful in their environment. In particular, the boomer generation that's continuing to work instead of retiring. Some of that they're working because they have to, and some of it I wonder if they continue to work because working makes you be seen and valued, and they're worried if they stop working, they stop being of use, if they're going to disappear and become invisible in the ways that many seniors report they feel this. As far as the actual science fiction content of it, the episode is based on a company asking seniors to go into a one-way journey into space and discovery and adventure, and Peg has signed up for this. Her companion is a AI voice in the computer. She doesn't seem to have to do anything because she doesn't have to do anything in the ship to keep it up and running, and she doesn't seem to have to respond to anything, look for anything, do any kind of reports or whatnot. What specifically she's looking for in space, or what specifically they sent these seniors out for in space if they're not observing? Is it just to see how humanity fares in a prolonged space, to see the effects on the body? Even that doesn't seem to make sense to me because the ships aren't being recalled, it's a one-way journey. Maybe it's just to see how long humans survive in a spaceship environment and what kind of mental toll that takes on people. I don't know, it seems like it's unethical even if the seniors sign up for it. I don't think there's a lot of value you would get from that. Certainly I'm not a scientist, so maybe I don't 100% understand the dynamics going on there. But the premise to me, this is the first premise where it was hard for me to suspend my disbelief. It didn't make sense just to send old people out into space in a one-way journey. Perhaps it's supposed to be another comment on how invisible and disposable we see our senior citizens, but if it's a comment on how disposable we see our senior citizens, number one, it's not as effective as some of the things that Peg says, but also the sci-fi element is just significantly lacking and it doesn't help bolster that up. This is another situation where I just feel like this is more about the soliloquy and less about the actual scenario or the science fiction aspects. To that degree, it's speculative in the nature that any kind of internal meanderings are, but it's not speculative in the way that science fiction is traditionally a thought experiment about humans interacting with technology, or about humans interacting with technology to see what makes you human, or to see what gives life value. It's just like an internal meandering, and I'm not sure it executes well in the sci-fi elements that it claims to have. The other thing is, I do think even though Helen Mirren is an excellent actor, she goes on way too long sometimes. The pauses are a little too long, she's a little too repetitive. After a certain while, it was like, I get the idea, I sort of understand what you're going for, and I wish you would stop. Even though I think this might be my favorite episode so far, I do think it was 3 to 5 minutes too long, and we could have cut it out. I hated the I'm gonna restart now at 71, I'm gonna call so-and-so and be a whole new me. Like, this isn't something that she's been saying her whole life in different period places, and either hasn't been able to restart or has restarted and has failed. But either way, it was just like,
oh, no. Don't ruin the experiment. Don't turn around. Don't tell yourself this thing that isn't true and then go back on Earth and continue to be quiet and not be a bother and be miserable.
I didn't find it hopeful. I think I was supposed to, because at the end she says, yeah, do find out if we can turn around, unless it's a bother, and then she pauses and says, no, even if it is a bother, let's turn around. Like, sort of implying that here she's finally turned the corner and that she's going to be happy and she's going to ask for what she wants and needs, and that she realizes that those wants and needs are valid and she deserve certain things, and that the AI has helped her with that. For me, like, what would have been a better ending is if we had come to find out that this was like a study of the human mind and that all the space stuff was a simulation, and if the simulation had gone off and she had been allowed to leave the room, like,
oh, you found what you were looking for. Congratulations, Peg.
And the sky goes into like a white room and the straps come out and they're like,
you are now able to leave the space vehicle.
Because, you know, she's been on Earth the whole time. An experiment to see if they could get that information from senior citizens, but also to see maybe if they could help with dementia, or see if they could help with senior happiness. That would have been sci-fi enough, the whole simulation therapy angle. And it would have stuck to exploring what it means to be human. The tagline at the front of this episode is, how far would you go to find yourself? But here's the thing, to me, is that Peg is starting to establish that part of who she is as a person doesn't exist without being able to interact with other people. So her being in the space station, traveling through space, she seems to imply she can't be herself while on this adventure or on this trip. She can only fully be herself on Earth, living her life and interacting with other people, which is an interesting concept, but in Peg's situation seems sort of sad and desolate, because I just can't imagine the company recalling her ship, and I can't imagine them letting her go back into regular life. I don't know, maybe they will. But overall, I kind of found this episode a bit of a Debbie Downer and a little too long. I like that we're starting to connect some of the solo episodes. I'm wondering if it's just going to be a Tom-Peg situation, or if we're going to weave all those threads back in. If you're looking for more science fiction, I would go ahead and recommend my science fiction playlist. I've been mentioning my Snowpiercer review because it's another sci-fi TV show that I've done a review with, but I also want to actually recommend my workshopped it, The Farine Apocalypse by Jenny Schwartz. This is like a hopeful science fiction doomsday preppers kind of scenario, and it's about a space race invading Earth and Earth having to start over again, which doesn't sound like it would be hopeful. There is like a lot of trauma to get to that point, but I do think overall there's a more hopeful message there, and that particular story explores what it means to be human, who you really are, and how what the rebuilding process would look like. The Peg episode is more like this Farine Apocalypse series than it is like the Snowpiercer show. So I'm going to recommend the Farine Apocalypse. There's about 5 books in that series, and they're short books. They're like 150 pages each. It's a young adult, new adult series with a female protagonist. I think it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think a lot of the same ideas and themes are explored here. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys are having a great Sunday. I'll talk to you later. Bye!